Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast. Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say is that, oh no, I've forgotten to put my slides up. That's what we say. We say that way too often, too. No, what we like to say is if you do not read the news, you are uninformed. If you read the news, you are misinformed. And that is the truth. These days, anybody who thinks they know exactly what's going on because they read the media, the news, doesn't know anything. But in any case, if you like our work here, we do here, please join us on redpillreligion.com. Remember, we've got all kinds of censorship going on, but we're pretty sure we're secure on redpillreligion.com. So if we lose our channel, we're already under one bogus strike. It's ridiculous. I don't know how long. We're trying to do our best not to violate things. But find us on redpillreligion.com. If we disappear on you, we are still looking at several things. By the way, please, if you would, we are doing a fundraiser. We are trying to raise $1,000 for the Freedom from Atheism Foundation and for us to upgrade to a modern podcasting network and better sound equipment. Just $1,000 and for a year of that, and we could use help for that. 20% goes to Freedom from Atheism Foundation, who supports our work, at least on atheism. And hit the PayPal jar. We've got $25 so far. We really appreciate your help on that. Please also just remember, hit us on Subscribestar or Bitcoin. Appreciate all that. And find us on things like Gab, Dissenter, and Subscribestar. We are here for the duration, no matter how much money we make or don't make, and no matter how many times we get the platform, we don't go away. So glad to say that we are joined again by our old pal, Deflating Atheism, rocking the Snoopy shades. Say hello, sir.
Hey man, I actually have a reason for rocking the shades today. I actually have a corneal scratch, so I have a
corneal scratch. Oh, you're just hungover. You don't have to lie. No, a corneal scratch. Really, would you have a little?
Just a mote in my eye, and it caused some damage. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was about how you did it. Some just kind of crap got in there. I permanently wear shades these days. That's pretty cool for me, actually. I permanently wear shades. Because I got a prescription. Eye doctor diagnosed me with a real specific light sensitivity, and now I wear shades 24/7. Feels good though.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were just talking about politics. It's really, really, really funny. To me, if you follow politics much, especially if you finally really let it sink in that the mainstream media is largely controlled and bogus. Once you start looking at certain alternative media sources, you can never go back. Yeah. And it becomes a question of, I mean, really, who do you believe in? Why do you believe them? I look at a lot of sources that are alternative media, and I think I've got a pretty good nose for who's a scammer and who's manipulating and who's not, or who's on the take, but honest in the terms of, I'm not going to name anybody, but there's this prominent guy that we've interviewed once or twice, and really, really nice. And he's a real cheerleader for the growth of nationalism around the globe. A really pleasant and a good guy too. But you can tell, he's really on board. He has completely drunk the nationalist Kool-Aid. And, people who are pushing the international nationalist agenda. And so there's no criticism or concern over the growth of nationalism. And a lot of sources, alternative, big and little, make a lot of good points about the growth of nationalism. Or similarly, I've been looking at some things lately and realizing that while I have, I've had great friends who are Jews for 20 plus years, Orthodox Jews especially. I've always gotten along great with Orthodox Jews. Criticizing Zionism is getting dangerous, and that's ridiculous. Zionism is an ethnic nationalist ideology, and it should be scrutinized as one, just like any other. And you say that, and people explode in rage.
Yeah.
And that's not appropriate. We should be able to have that conversation. You can't just shut it down. Isn't it funny how everybody used to mock you if you followed Alex Jones, and yet not everything, but a good bit of what Alex Jones was saying over the last 20 years has come to pass.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's not reliable. I don't consider him reliable or 100% credible. I don't consider anybody 100% credible anymore. But I actually wonder how long it's going to take for more Americans to. So why am I even looking at MSNBC, CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Business Weekly, my local paper, my local town paper, the Tribune or whatever it is? All of them are controlled by the same six major corporations, which in turn are controlled by an even smaller number of investment houses. The whole of the media establishment is controlled, and certain people are allowed to be criticized and certain aren't. And so then you go into the alternative media, though, and I think, and by the way, I really love Owen Benjamin, and I'm actually hoping one day to get to talk to him, which is going to be hard, but I would love to, because he's got some stuff he needs to hear, especially on religion. And a few other things.
We were talking about him before.
Owen Benjamin, yeah, and I really enjoy Owen Benjamin, and I think it's terrible that he's been censored the way he has, because the more you censor him, you were making this point, the more you censor a guy like Owen Benjamin or a Vox Day or anybody else, the more you harden their position.
Yes.
And the more you also make them move toward the more radical people who don't shun them. You know, you're creating something there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when you outcast a person, then they go and hang out with the other outcasts. They absorb their ideas. So this isn't a slam against Owen Benjamin, who I love, but I have noticed that he's been more and more insistent on towing the line, on being edgy for the sake of being edgy, almost. You know, in my view.
Right. That's right. And at some point he needs to dial back, but he's in a position where he almost can't. Although I think he can. Like you know, maybe he and Vox Day, for example, could meet some anti-Zionist Jewish rabbis, or if not anti-Zionist, or I mean, I know at least one who's critical of Zionism and highly critical of Israel. He thinks Israel should exist, so he kind of defends it and defends Zionism a little, but for the most part, he just says this is, you know, he doesn't hesitate to call out Mossad. He doesn't hesitate to call out other bad things that the Israeli government does. He's no fan of Bibi Netanyahu. He, you know, he's got a lot of things to say that, you know, you got to be able to dial back, and whatever you think of quote unquote Zionism or Israel or the Jews in the plural or whatever, you still got to talk to people and have dialogue with them. And because I really do think it's okay to make fun of Jews, for example, but it's not okay to just not stop ever and like make that your thing.
Yeah,
that starts to become a problem. Similarly, I love Michael Jones and Michael Jones, and I pray I get to have him on at least one more time. He's too red hot now, but I may try him again in a few months. I think the biggest problem with Michael Jones, when you listen to him talk, and I know you haven't, he's really hard to argue with, and he's really hard to call an anti-Semite, but sometimes he gets sloppy and loses precision in his language. So he'll say something broadly about the Jews and in one context, and something broadly about the Jews in another context. And in isolated context, it works, but in the same conversation, it doesn't.
He might be talking about the state of Israel or something.
Right. He'll flash through. He'll unconsciously not disambiguate the Zionist from, let's say, the globalist Marxists, from the, you know, Jewish gangster, because there are Jewish mobsters, by the way, and you know, a little too fast to lump it all as the Jews with the language, but otherwise he's not saying anything objectionable. I actually totally recommend people check him out. He's the new Jordan Peterson. I swear he is. I swear he is. But even there, everybody should always remember this. You've got to think for yourself and be careful not to drink anybody's Kool-Aid. You know what I mean?
I really think Jordan Peterson got a really unfair backlash, because I think people were expecting him to be something he's not. They were expecting him to be some sort of a messiah figure. I was like, no, I mean he's saying things, you can take some of it or leave it. I think a rational kind of assessment would say that on balance, his effect on the public discourse has been positive. I definitely think the world is better for him being there.
I agree. I also agree he is quite overrated, and I've joined some of the backlash against him. Actually, I've lost a lot because he has affiliated himself with the intellectual dark web. The more I look at the intellectual dark web, the more I just see a web of awful, evil people that I don't think much of.
Yeah.
And even the supposed heroes like Ayan Hirsi Ali. I'm sorry for people who hate Islam. You can hate Islam all you want. It will not change the fact that she is a very dodgy character and a proven fraud in a number of ways, and doesn't deserve that much respect.
Yeah, and I should point out that neither escaping red pill religion nor deflating atheism are Islam bashers. That's not.
Oh, actually, we're not. Yeah, we don't. I think I think some of the criticism of Islam is valid, but a lot of what's out there is over the top. And most important of all, you can't talk to Muslims when you just accept these blatant. Well, they're animals. They're crazy. They're lying to you and will kill you. They beat and rape their women every day and all that. You're done with any kind of sane conversation at that point. Yeah. So anyway,
we have someone here.
We do. Hey, Eric joined. Eric, how you doing, brother?
What's going on, guys? Sorry, I'm late.
One of the things that I was talking. Oh, by the way, Eric, everybody, this is Analytic Alchemist, aka Eric, our sort of anarchist friend. Are you in a friendly to Jesus mood these days? Because I know you swung back and forth on that one.
Oh no, you're good.
Oh, okay, good, excellent. One of the things I've noticed, Eric, is that over the years, for a number of reasons, I have trended more rightward in my politics, but I have always kept an eye looking out for sane voices on the left, or anybody who's on the left who's saying things that were right. And I have found that the more I did that, it got eerie after a while, because I really have noticed that the so-called, they mock this, but the so-called fringe left and the so-called fringe right, yeah, some of the nuttiest people are there, but some of the people with the best information are there, and they don't know each other in the weirdest ways. Like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember when Occupy Wall Street was a thing.
Yep.
But I did an analysis of it, and I saw a few others who did analyses of it, although they kind of got quashed. If you looked at the issues that Occupy Wall Street people most said they cared about, and you looked at the issues that the Tea Partiers said they cared most about, there was like better than 80% overlap, which is interesting because they were also set to hate each other. And I think that's because both parties were used. I think it's part of that whole Hegelian dialectic where basically wealthy billionaires control both sides of the debate to get what they want.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of corporate sponsorship going on there.
And perfect. Yeah.
And this is why, for example, I'm skeptical of the growing nationalist movement. Like the best cheerleader for it is Dr. Steve Turley, and I love the guy, and everybody should subscribe to his channel and see what a guy who loves the incoming tide of nationalism looks like. He's not irrational, and there are good things that the nationalists are bringing, but there's no skepticism there of it either. And this whole yellow vest thing is tightly tied in with nationalists all over the globe. And people are still acting like the yellow vest thing is grassroots. It's
no.
What?
Immediately, I noticed it wasn't because of how fast it sprung up, right? And then how big it got.
Way too fast.
Right.
Well, it's all a matter of striking a balance. I mean, it could very well be the case that nowadays, like in America, the Democrats are completely wrong. I'm completely open to the possibility that maybe 20 or 30 years time, it will be absolutely right to do the same thing to the Republicans. Say they've gone off the deep end. They're completely tyrannical. Maybe it's the same thing with the globalists and the nationalists. Because honestly, I would never say this to Steve Turley. I've had a very pleasant conversation with him. I'm actually not really opposed to globalism in principle. I mean, I don't like the tyrannical means by which they try to affect it. I guess that's the argument, is that globalism can only be affected by tyrannical means. That might be the strongest argument against it. But, opposing globalism is not like my raison d'etre or something. It's not like a cause of mine. It's just in the current kind of paradigm, it seems like a very sinister force.
The way I see it is that globalism is just what Marxism and certain occultic Freemasonic type groups evolved into. And the counter to globalism has always been the same, which has usually been the same: nationalism. But the problem is, nationalists too can be really, really dangerous.
Well, no, I would actually take issue. My lights are going out here. The counter to this is spirituality.
Yes,
That's
it is.
ultimately the corrective force. And like I always point to this, and maybe it's just kind of my analysis. I always go back to a Clockwork Orange, which you have this poor kind of rat in the maze where it's constantly vacillating between anarchy and tyranny. And that's what I think. Anthony Burgess was a Catholic. I think that was kind of the message, and kind of, Kubrick kind of erased that and made it kind of like, Alex DeLarge was like an existentialist hero or something. But I think in the original, with like the 21st chapter, you're constantly going back between, tyranny and anarchy, because there's no spiritual grounding there. And so I think that's ultimately the corrective, is that you have to have a spiritual grounding to have true freedom or anything. And the same thing with globalism or globalism and nationalism, you're always ricocheting from one to another without that kind of ballast of spirituality.
The issue is when the state becomes
God. Yes.
The state becomes God. Yes, the state goes where God belongs, instead of being, subordinate and restricted to a proper role. What were you going to say?
That's something that. Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. That's something that theism in general offers that is very useful to society as a whole, which is that, hey, humans are not the epitome of power, right? There's a power higher than that we have to adhere to, at least to some extent on a moral level, and how that all ties in politically and economically. So it's any form of theism to me is the antithesis to full-blown statism.
Yes.
I think it's the only answer. Although it has its problems too. Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, that's all I wanted.
Oh yeah. The counter danger, and I will even give certain atheists credit for being right on this one. The state can malevolently put itself in that role, and get people to worship. If not, you do actually see emperor worship cults. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, that's what the Kim dynasty is in South Korea or in North Korea. But it's an emperor cult. It's straight up an emperor cult. And the emperor cult is still somewhat alive in Japan. But if you can have a state religion where basically God is always on your side, then you really win. Well, you don't really win. You understand what I mean? Well, I'll just be blunt about it. There's something called the American civic religion, and I think it's really dangerous and has been used cynically by many politicians. Which is basically,
You mean like playing the Star Spangled Banner in church?
Well, yes, or more to the point, cynically using gullible Bible Christians to get them to sign on and start acting like basically the founding fathers are a second set of prophets, and America has a special dispensation and a role in the coming apocalypse where we're going to be allied with Israel and blah, blah, all this. People in politics will cynically manipulate religion that way and tell them, Jesus wants you to vote for George Bush or whatever it is. But much more graphically, just convince you that God wants us to go to war with Iran or whatever it is.
Right. And even though most of the policies that whatever president it is, or, are just, they don't adhere to Christian principles, right?
Right. But see, then do you know what that points to? And I know if E. Michael Jones were here, by the way, I will shout out to everybody. You don't have to agree with everything E. Michael Jones says. You cannot reasonably call him an anti-Semite. He might occasionally slip pretty into something that sounds a little like it, but you really listen to the man, he's not. And he makes a lot of points that cannot be refuted. I recommend just search on YouTube and spend 3 hours listen to his best interview on the slaughter of cities, Libido Dominandi, any one of the good talks he did on that, and the Jewish revolutionary spirit, and you'll look at the world different. And that doesn't mean you'll see everything his way either. But and I forget why I bring that up, except even though I love the guy, I still can take issue with him, and I don't have to think he's right about everything. But he's a fabulous source, by the way. You will learn so many things. I listened to I've listened to him talk 3 or 4 times now on the slaughter of cities. And it changed how I saw the world again. Like, because I'm listening to him and he's describing things I saw happen when I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s. He's describing it perfectly. Down to, and this was maybe a little personal, he described a neighborhood I lived in Chicago for a few years when I was a kid that I remember very vividly. And he describes what it was like perfectly there. And he goes into naming names and people and policies and government officials and prominent Protestant and Jewish groups and finance groups and government policymakers literally decided that they needed to break up Catholic power in the United States because ethnic Catholic neighborhoods in the cities were getting much too politically powerful by the middle of the 20th century. They even managed to elect a president in Kennedy, and they literally constructed policies to break up ethnic neighborhoods in the inner cities, mostly Catholic neighborhoods, but also Greek Orthodox and such, but especially they were targeting Catholic neighborhoods. And so began busing in Black people and then accusing them of being racist and enacting policies to cause what they called white flight. But it was really people who had who were being brought in themselves were being moved from the South and other places and moved into cities where they didn't have any idea of how to function anyway. It was specifically done on purpose, and he names names and he names people, and it was done to disperse Catholic political power in the United States. Now you may think that's bad or good, but it definitely happened, and it's amazing. And when you go
to like urban planners like Robert Moses and people like that.
Yeah, urban planners, and I don't know if Robert Moses was one of the names that he named, but he names the prominent Protestant organizations. This country used to be ruled to a very large extent by what used to be called WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, right? And you never hear that phrase anymore. It's extremely rare, but it was still fairly common when I was a kid in the 70s. And because white Anglo-Saxon Protestants basically described this kind of mass of Reformed Lutherans, Episcopalians, Methodists, Presbyterians, who would get together in these. They were all anti-Catholic, so they would get together in these groups of other Protestants, and that was the Rockefeller people.
Yeah, well, they defined the whole Ivy League boys club.
Yes. And what he notes, and so that throughout much of the 20th, 19th, and late 19th, and especially early 20th centuries, it was very obvious that the primary ethnic groups in the United States were Protestants, Catholics, and Jews. And it had been observed and can still be shown in the social science too, that what used to happen is immigrants to America went one of 3 ways. If you came in and you were a German, or you were a German Lutheran, within 2 generations, you were just kind of an American Protestant. Or if you came in as an Irish Catholic, within about 2 generations, you were an American Catholic. And the country really did more divide up politically and otherwise that way than any other way, much more so than racially. So it was like this 3-legged stool: the Catholics, the Protestants, and the Jews. The Jews were and this isn't picking on all Jews, but the rich Jewish organizations, the influential Jewish organizations, B'nai B'rith and all these other prominent Jewish organizations that were proud of their Jewishness, had a lot of money and clout in Hollywood and New York. So even though their population was smaller, they had a bigger influence. And I did not know this, but like, it's just interesting that part of what has happened is that the WASP class, according to Jones, and you can pretty much not deny it, the WASP class birth controlled itself out of power. Like they literally birth control and reform theology, and they fell apart and lost any relevance. So none of the big Protestant groups are important anymore. I guess the Rockefeller family probably is, but none of the big now it's all either evangelicals or Catholics, and Catholics are in complete chaos. And that's an interesting way of looking at how the politics shapes now.
And I also wonder if it has to do with the fact that the most troubled kind of religious demographic as far as disaffiliation goes is kind of the mainline Protestants.
Yeah. And another thing that's historically true is that Catholics used to be a solid Democratic voting constituency.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like
they're hated, right, within that party. But go ahead.
Back in the 80s, if you were anti-death penalty, that just meant you were a Catholic. That was the constituency for opposing the death penalty.
That's actually the weirdest thing about being Catholic. I've even seen cartoons on it. And it's like, are you against abortion? Yes. So you're a liberal. Are you against the death penalty? Yes. I'm sorry. So you're a liberal? No, I'm Catholic. On both of those.
Yeah.
I'm against the death penalty, so no, I'm not a liberal. I'm a Catholic. I'm against abortion, so no, I'm not a liberal. I'm a Catholic. I'm still that way. I think Catholics who are for the death penalty are too. Never mind. I don't want to get into that debate. Sometimes it's justified, but usually it's not. You can't trust the state.
But it's useful to have a longer memory than I think some of these demagogues want us to have. They just want us to know the kind of political landscape of the last 4 or 5 years. They don't want us to have that long view.
Well, check it out, Rob.
100 years, never mind the last 30 years.
All right, so check it out, Rob. You're old enough to see this. The divorce culture, which was inflicted on us on purpose. We know the specific political groups that did it, and it was liberal Rockefellers and wealthy Jewish groups are the ones who pushed for unilateral no-fault divorce. We saw the ushering in of the divorce culture. The divorce culture comes in with feminism. We see now at this point about half of all quote-unquote white kids are now born out of wedlock or from broken families. So they're starting to look exactly like black families did in the 70s. And they've been, a whole generation of young men has been stripped of their fathers. And if you know anything about, if you've studied anthropology or some of the stuff I've sputtered in, like talking with guys like Warren Farrell and a lot of the fathers' rights and the men's advocates and such, and just all kinds of psychologists, the pedagogical role of the father is the most important one. It's just nature, by the way. Children get most of their early learning from their mothers and certain moral and other learning from their mothers, but they instinctively look to their fathers for a whole lot of higher learning. And fathers instinctively do that. In fact, middle-aged men love talking like we're doing right now. And that's because ideally we should be talking to our sons this way, to tell them about the world and all the things we know. Huh?
Nothing going.
You know what I mean? This is how knowledge gets passed on. And when you've got a whole generation of young men effectively severed and alienated from their fathers, or who have, disempowered fathers who, are weak and can't be much in their lives, they have to get their information from the popular culture and from their friends. And they lose the intergenerational memory.
Yeah. Well, another thing is they also have a tendency to kind of latch on to these causes that kind of exploit their need for kind of meaning and belonging.
Yes. And some kind of sense of purpose and justice. They scoop up young people into radical politics.
Not least
right wing, by the way, huh?
Not least of which is movement atheism.
Well, yeah, that's one of them.
It's atheism. I'm sorry, I slurred that.
Dude, all the kids who join atheism are from broken homes and shitty lives and hate themselves. All of them. And they're all boys. I mean, like 1 in 10 is a girl. It's ridiculous. And it's because they hate themselves and they have no good dads at home. And they have no positive role models in their life, and they don't get the learning. And really, it's men sitting around talking and arguing with each other and passing on what they know to younger men that builds civilization. And
that's why, as imperfect a vessel as he is, I think what Jordan Peterson is doing is really essential.
I do and I don't, because I think he's past his use-by date.
Yeah, okay.
I think a lot of young people would really benefit from reading his first book or two.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think he's got nothing else to say anymore. I'm glad he's challenging political correctness, but I don't like any of the people he's doing it with.
Yeah.
I don't even think that much of Christina Hoff Sommers anymore, although, she's not that bad. But yeah. So
clean your room, Max.
But you know,
I say I'm in month 3 of the spring cleaning of my apartment, and I think I'm making real progress. So alerting you to that, yes.
Well, there you go. That is the same apartment since you've been living there for a few years, haven't you?
Yes. Up until recently, I was paying less than $600 for it. That blows people's minds. Yeah.
Oh hell, hang on to that. In this economy,
yeah.
Hang on to that. I wouldn't move. So I don't know what got me rambling on that, but no, Jordan Peterson's rules for life are actually really good advice. I'm sorry if anybody gets mad. They really are good advice. If you follow that advice, your life will go better. If I had followed some of his advice when I was young, my life would have gone better. But beyond that, he's got no real deep answers. He's got a few basic rules for life and a few common sense things to say that were dangerous to say. So it's like, yay, someone said it, yay. But I think people need to go on to something of more substance.
Yes,
for sure. We need to get them to Aristotle. We need to get them to Plato. We really do. They need to learn some classical philosophy. They're always thinking, oh, I want the more modern stuff. I'm like, well, figure out what the classics had first before you're convinced the modern guys are so smart.
This is what I think we need. We need a resurgence of the 90s coffee house intellectual, of the guy who, you can mock me for this, but a guy who even if he was completely harebrained or something, there was at least a kind of interdisciplinary kind of approach where you could take things from the humanities or the sciences before this whole kind of idiot regime, before the kind of Richard Dawkins and his whole bulldozer of banality kind of leveled the culture, and then just said, yeah, basically scientific materialism rules the roost, and that's all you need to know about everything. People actually try to draw from different disciplines to kind of form their worldview, and I think, again, not to drop his name again, Jordan Peterson is part of that. And I think even like now that people are looking at what's his face, I don't know. Just even if you have to go to like the European continental philosophers that conservatives love to hate, just anything that's outside this stifling, suffocating world of basically scientific materialism. I mean, because that's what strikes me most about the whole new atheism movement is how culturally and philosophically illiterate it is. If people had some awareness of the world outside, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, they would be inoculated to all of this. But instead, that's what hurts my heart, is when you hear like a kid say, "Oh yeah, Sam Harris is a great intellectual," or they say something like Matt Dillahunty is a great intellect. It's like, oh God, come on, give me a break.
I had one say to me recently, "Show me where Aaron Rod lied about anything." Oh my God, you haven't even bothered looking at anything, have you? You've just listened to him. It's ridiculous. They're all looking for their fathers. They're looking, and not just their fathers, but their grandfathers and their uncles and their cousins, their male role models who keep the male side of human knowledge and civilization going. They've been cut off from it, and it's done on purpose. I've been telling you, the New Atheist Project and the Internet Atheist Project, I tell everybody, nobody believes me, it was an indoctrination campaign. Totally, it was about youth indoctrination, because if they can make you an atheist materialist, then they can convince you of anything if they tells you it's science and it feels good.
Mac, I've come more in line with your view. I don't think there's quite as straight a line as you make it out to be, but I kind of see, looking at the political currents of especially like the last 4 years or so, and New Atheism goes back 15 years, it really seems to be that the New Atheism Project was to soften people up for a coming tyranny, which
Yes.
is to make people subjects, because they, like I said, we've actually done priming studies. When people are primed with a deterministic, materialistic worldview, they don't become iconoclastic rebels. They become very suggestible, passive subjects. So
Yeah.
I really
Yep.
think that
Yes. And let me just say, if I know I've been mentioning, but I know it's a hard book to read, and it's not written to be sensationalist. It's written like a textbook, but that's because it's so well documented, and documented to the most highest rigorous standards. Gordon Painter, in his book, The New Atheist Denial of History, clearly demonstrates that Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens were doing exactly what you just said. And complicit parties would include people like Steven Pinker and Michael Shermer. They were, in fact, softening people up for an outright assault on Christianity. He doesn't say that, but you look at it, and it was a propaganda campaign designed exactly like previous propaganda campaigns that were done to kill Christians.
yes.
Multiple times in multiple countries. It is identical, including using some of the same material used in those campaigns that were used to kill Christians. And that's what the whole New Atheist Project is, and that is also what Atheist Republic and Atheist Experience and American Atheists all are. In fact, American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation all have ties going back to communist front groups. And the goal is to wipe out Christianity, including hurting and killing Christians if necessary, taking their children away, re-educating them. It's a planned thing. Yeah. And a lot of the people in internet atheism were the internet phase of this. How can I prove this to you? I was listening to Penn Jillette at the time when he was announcing the project to take the internet for atheism. And when others like the Rational Response Squad were announced as they were going to take over the internet for rationalism, and they brutalized people off the internet. It's what they did, and it's what's actually left right now of the internet atheism is a fraction of its former glory.
Yes,
almost gone. Unless there's a major change of fortunes, they're almost done.
Yeah.
Although interesting now, I notice, no, I'm not even going to go there. But interest in religion is surging. So it's just going to be a matter of which religion or religions get popular.
Yeah, and people point to a study. I think there was a study recently that said there was like another percentage point drop in religious affiliation in the United States. And I mean, as long as like the World War II generation keeps dying off, I think we may see that continue for a few years. But when you look at the culture, I mean, where are all the atheism proponents? You and I think both agree. You and I both agree that for atheism to flourish in a society, there needs to be some sort of constant pressure applied from somewhere up top. It doesn't happen organically from the people. There has to be some sort of pressure applied. So where would that pressure be coming from these days? I don't see it. I really think that the course is going to reverse in maybe,
Well, it's going to change. Yeah. I know that the Noahide religion is going to get popular. I know the Noahide religion is going to get popular. I've already met some, and it's growing in the U.S., which is interesting. But if you read Rodney Stark's book, The Triumph of Faith, Rodney Stark's a real careful sociologist, and he works with other sociologists. He's airtight. What has happened in America, it's interesting because you hear another drop-off of religious affiliation. I'm not sure your theory is correct, although there's probably something to it, because one of the things that is still happens to be the case is that the number of weekly churchgoers in the United States is entirely unchanged over the last 30 years. It's entirely unchanged.
Yes.
So
And the number of people who pray daily, I think, has actually gone up.
what has happened is that casual observance of Christianity or casual respect of Christianity has disappeared. All but completely disappeared. So it's no longer like it was even 20 years ago, where a lot of people say, yeah, I'm Christian, but they never went to church and really didn't believe anything, or they would go once in a while, maybe get more interested when we were older. And that has dropped off. And that is because of the new atheism and the internet atheism, because young people are trained to hate us. And they're trained with all sorts of hate propagandas about us. The schools do it too. And so, but see, nobody stays atheist. Almost nobody does. So they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go to Islam. They're going to go to, a Gentile Hebrew religion like Noahidism. They're going to go to paganism. They're going to go to shamanism. They're going to go to occultism. They're going to go somewhere because they're not going to stay atheists.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, I think, the growth of identitarian groups, that has been very much aided by the attack on Christianity. I think it's also telling that they also go to these kind of pagan, blood and soil ancestor worship kind of things.
That is suddenly all over the place. I mean, I've even interviewed a fascinating woman about it who's a pagan priestess, and they take that blood and soil stuff seriously.
Yeah.
I'll trust the spiritual pagans over the secular ethnic nationalists because they're more dangerous. But
yeah.
It's funny, we're facing paganism in America again. It's like, man, that's okay. I don't hate all pagans. I'm just saying it's ironic. But this is just the nature of things, I guess. But this was done on purpose by people with money and a lot of power in the media. They made, and I know that if you read Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens, you can tear them apart. In fact, at this point, the smartest of the new atheists, Daniel Dennett, I would have the hardest time with, and I could still completely annihilate him.
Yeah.
He's an idiot. He really is. Michael Jones said it. Daniel Dennett said one of the dumbest things in the history of philosophy when he asserted boldly that No, he's well. I don't know what he said. No, that was Tom. Did he say matter doesn't exist?
No. I'm talking consciousness doesn't exist.
Daniel Dennett said that consciousness is an illusion.
Yeah, consciousness. We think we have. Yeah, we think consciousness. Yeah, he's a nut. That's in no way a scientific statement. But the dumbest statement he said was the universe created itself, or came from something very small.
Wow, case closed then, huh?
I'm convinced. I'm convinced completely. The universe created itself or came from something very small.
Well, in a trivial sense, I mean, yeah, I think a large universe was kind of, had as its prior material cause a smaller universe. So I guess it's true in a trivial sense. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's just blanking hardcore on the metaphysics.
Yeah. Well, to say something created itself or brought itself into existence.
But you know something else that's sinister with the new atheists and with the internet atheists? They'll even embed the kids with mind viruses like philosophy is part of decadent effete culture. And metaphysics is stupid and has no use. They'll say that metaphysics is stupid and is not useful. Philosophy is for people, that's for decadent, decaying cultures. That's an intentional that's an intentional mind bomb to get them to not think.
Well, that's weird, man. If someone told me that metaphysics was stupid, I'd ask them, "What is stupid?"
By the way, did you guys ever see the cartoon? It has one guy that was actually from Existentialist Comics, and they had I believe I think philosophy is great, and the other guy says, "I think science is better than philosophy." Why do you think that? He says, because science. And the other guy got to blow off and says, you're doing philosophy right now. Even by explaining why you think science is better than philosophy, you are doing philosophy.
Yes.
I mean, the science is stemmed from philosophy. That's the kicker.
Exactly. As others have said, and this is so true. And I'm not even the world's best philosopher. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally not. But if you say, all men philosophize. All men philosophize. If you say you will not do philosophy, you will merely philosophize badly.
Badly, yes.
And that's what's going on there. That whole thing where they think they can recreate the universe or recreate man in their own image. It starts at the very first level. They think they can recreate every idea. I'm not quite sure what I meant by that. I think I lost my train of thought. But they think they can rewrite reality itself, because they're so clever.
Yeah.
And they're so unburdened with their ability to, their thoughts are unshackled. So they will bring us to, the great scientific rationalist future. And
yeah, well, no one's mind is more closed than the person who thinks that they alone think for themselves, and that's what you get when you have an entire generation who are completely philosophically and culturally shuttered. Is that they know so little that they actually think that they are the first people to think for themselves, and that a lot of the questions they're asking haven't been asked for the past 2,500 years. And over and over.
They also think they invented sex and that they invented kink.
Yes.
It's just
you could literally find tentacle porn from the 1300s. Yes.
Yes.
Now don't ask him how he knows that.
Yes.
Tell us more about your ancient porn collection. You like the Sumerian or the Babylonian tentacle porn?
Well, no, it's all Japanese. They were weird even back then. Yeah, they were messed up even back then. Yeah,
that's weird. That's actually true, unfortunately.
I have finally got to the point too where I get where hostility to Japanese art and literature comes from. I'm old enough and stodgy enough to get it because I never was. I've always liked or appreciated some of the better stuff in manga, and I like foreign films. Koreans make interesting films. The Japanese have made some interesting films. I was always like that, but I'm starting to see it now because I really do think there's been a project to cut people off from their fathers and from intergenerational memory. Young men have been taught to fear male authority figures or disrespect authority figures and to be disconnected from their own culture.
Yes.
So popularizing the Japanese culture is not bad. A lot of it's beautiful, but popularizing that and kind of hiding all the great stuff in our own culture has been a project too.
I was just thinking about this earlier today. I mean, you often hear the new atheists kind of make that exception. Well, I hate all religions, but I'll give Buddhism kind of a little pass. You hear that a lot,
Well, yeah, and they have fake atheist versions of Buddhism too. Yeah. By the way, the fake atheist Buddhism scares me. I mean, it's completely made up by Maoists and international communists in the middle of the 20th century. It's atheist Buddhism, like Theravada Buddhism, is fake atheist Buddhism. They claim a fake history for it, like that they were always like this, that the original Buddha was an atheist. In fact, did you know that? That's what they teach, and Wikipedia will stand that up now. Mm-hmm. And it's a stone cold lie. Theravada Buddhism and one other kind of Buddhism is a creation of the 20th century.
Well, China has entire teams dedicated to going on Wikipedia. China has entire teams dedicated to going on Wikipedia and erasing all records of the the Chinese massacres of the religious of the Falun Gong and the Christians and all the religious people massacred in China. They're actively trying to delete all references to those things.
I'm a Wikipedia editor, and I have been for something like 15 years. I'll show anybody my account if they want. I mean, I've gotten even like awards and prizes and stuff. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of edits. Sometimes I'm more active than others. Sometimes the edits are very small because I'm one of those weird types. Like if I see a typo, I just have to fix it. But I've done other contributions too. And organized atheism is on there, and you can tell a lot of it's coming from China.
Yeah.
And other countries. And organized atheism is there, and they They censor pages. I mean, like I know some others that, Wikipedia editors who do this. We watch certain pages. I'm not saying we coordinate, but I'm just saying we kind of know who each other are and we see it. And we're constantly at war with people who are fighting information on anti-Christian propaganda, who promote anti-Christian propaganda on Wikipedia, who disparage anything, who try to obliterate any record. We've been fighting, and even getting an article going on state atheism as a thing was filled with these weird drones arguing that it's impossible that there is such a thing as state atheism, or why, or saying there would be no real actual reason for there to be a page on state atheism. And they got tons of it, and then you can tell it's people like me and a few others who are in there. We have to fight them.
Yeah.
Or they'd have everything. Wikipedia is totally controlled, and it's not just by atheists, but ideological atheists have control of much of Wikipedia. And they hate the Christian religion. They hate other religions too, but they especially hate the Christian religion. They do leave some pages alone. Like they seem to leave the Catholic pages alone and the Eastern Orthodox pages alone. I think because those are too well populated by actual faithful editors. But man, they were, and big corporations do it too. I'm not just saying it's the atheists, but you see big corporations. The Chinese government does it. Our government does it. If you think all the intelligence agencies in the world aren't doing it, you're a fool. If you think big corporations aren't doing it, you're a fool. And yes, people get paid to do it. They're not supposed to be, but since they edit anonymously, you can't catch them unless they admit it. So there are people being paid full time to edit Wikipedia. It's ridiculous. So I'm sorry to rant about that, but this is why I also keep saying, no, there really is a big grand atheist project, guys. like everything we just talked to, add the fact that there's this whole, I'll show anybody who wants, there's this whole full-blown war on Wikipedia and dedicated teams of atheists editors on Wikipedia trying to put up hate propaganda, trying to take out things that's not favorable to their worldview, trying to basically deny genocide at the religious genocide at the hand of atheists. It's ridiculous, and they pump up groups like this Theravada Buddhism, which Wikipedia will even try to tell you is the original authentic Buddhism. And supposedly in Theravada Buddhism, they don't believe in any spirit forces or gods or godlike beings or any kind of magic or spells. They see the idea of spiritual forces as psychological ideas in our heads and myths. And this is what the Buddha taught. And they don't really necessarily think reincarnation is real. Well, it might be, but it's not really literal. It's metaphorical. And it's totally fake atheist Buddhism.
Yeah.
And there is, it has its parallel in something called positive Christianity and liberation theology, which were fascist and communist efforts to make Jesus be a fascist or a communist. So positive Christianity was secular Nazi Christianity, where Jesus was basically an atheist and a Nazi, and liberation theology, where Jesus is basically an atheist and a communist.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the whole thing with Hitler was Hitler was a Christian in an extremely qualified sense. He believed in a Christianity that was completely gutted of its complete spiritual component.
Well, no, it's not even quite that. He endorsed the creation of something called positive Christianity. He hated Christianity. Straight up, he did. He'd lie, he grew up and he was Christian friendly or tried to woo Christians, but by the time he was in power, he hated Christians completely. Yes. And purged them. But in response to reports that basically it wasn't working, people wouldn't stop being Christian. Mm-hmm. And so one of the schemes was positive Christianity, which was a rewrite of the New Testament and a reinterpret the New Testament to suggest that God's not real. None of these tales are real allegory. The real Jews are the white Aryans. And Jesus wants the white Aryans, who are the true Jews, to take over the world. Mm. And that was positive Christianity. It didn't sell. In fact, millions of Christians were persecuted and killed, including Maximilian Mary Kolbe, because they would not endorse it. And so yeah, I don't know. It's
You also hear a lot of Black Hebrews kind of espouse the same thing with a kind of from the opposite end, and you hear like the 5% Nation of Islam people. They too deny any sort of spiritual forces in the world, but they think that the 12 tribes of Israel were just various tribes of colored people. So yeah, it comes from all angles.
there you go. Yeah. Oh no, there's no shortage of kooky groups who think that we're the real Jews. Well, actually, to be honest, Catholics think that too. So do Orthodox Christians. We think we're the continuation of Judaism anyway. But
there are lots of religions that don't have any spiritual component at all. So the atheists can malign all religions as being irrational because a lot of them are atheist.
well, yeah, and some are close to it. Like I'm pretty sure, like, is it Jains? I think the Jains and maybe the Baha'i, they believe there is absolutely a God, but the God is completely incomprehensible and does not communicate with us and is completely beyond our comprehension. You can still pray to him, but it's for your benefit mostly because God's too inscrutable to actually have a relationship with you. And I was like, well, that's practically an atheist religion, but I don't know. But anyway, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and there are elements of truth to all religions, which in fact there may very well be.
Oh, I wanted to bring up a story here. I want to bring up one on Zero Hedge. I'm not going to flash it because I'm getting a lot, but I can flash a quote for it. I'm getting more and more paranoid about copyright strikes, and people are getting copyright strikes for dumb things. But on the Red Pill Religion blog, I quote on this story, Zero Hedge posits a plausible QAnon story. If you go on Zero Hedge, you and I, Rob, followed QAnon on and off at a certain distance. It scared the crap out of me originally because I could tell it was really professional and had real information in it. But I mean, I never trusted it, right? We have seen several attempts over the last few years to explain what QAnon is, and Zero Hedge has the best one I've seen so far. One of the first I've read and said, yes, this is very plausible. There may be problems with it, or it may be wrong, but they have a pretty good. It really sounds plausible. The quote I would have is, the new research reveals that a loose network, including an organization known as Joint Task Force Make America Great Again, made up of intelligent whistleblowers, alternative media figures, and individuals with a known history of virally spreading information online, was most likely responsible for inventing QAnon. And then if you click through and read the story, they name names and they name people, and I can't say that I know they're right, but it makes sense.
None of which implies that the information is not authentic.
Well, no, in fact, it implies that some of it must be true.
Yeah.
However, again, it's a question of who and what's their agenda.
Yeah.
And how much are they telling the truth? And I think one of the things that evades, which is bothering me, is that I think that if you watch QAnon long enough and watch politics long enough, it is impossible to believe that the Trump people and that Donald Trump himself were not fully aware of QAnon and complicit in it in some fashion. I mean, maybe people within White House staff could be kept sealed, but people in the Trump campaign, the Trump organization, they have to have known about it. Yeah. It's literally impossible for them not to have.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be real interested 5 years from now what the history shows us what QAnon was. Like when Trump is gone, if we're still all here and the Agenda 2030 shit hasn't killed us all off and silenced all our free speech yet, I think we'll be looking back and saying, wow, that was interesting, because QAnon is also kind of shady. It was manipulating people.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing is that, the media was running nonstop hit pieces. By the way, one of your own team members shared an article that was so obviously a hit piece, and I was extremely disappointed because it was so transparently a hit piece. I cannot believe it. But
what did they post?
Well, I'll get back with you later. It's just
just so people know, though, we don't mandate people's political opinions on Reddit.
Yeah.
Argue. So, okay, one of my teammates had a disagreement with you. Well, they're allowed to.
Yeah.
What was it about?
Well, no, I just don't like things that are just. It was the one where QAnon, they all believe that Hillary Clinton is a baby eater or something. And it's like, no, you're getting something that some person said, and you're just applying it to QAnon, and they don't really seem to have an idea what QAnon is.
Well, no, well, I'd have to see, but yeah, it sounds like it's see, I don't know, because if you were watching that, then you were watching what was in WikiLeaks and what Mike Cernovich was pointing out, and that there are, within the QAnon narrative, there is the idea that there are people who are cannibalistic child rapists.
Well, yes, you could say the QAnon narrative of everyone who's kind of affiliated with it, but anything that came from the QAnon account, no, you would not get anything like that,
No, actually, you wouldn't. Actually, that's true. You're right. In fact, from all the QAnon dispatches I remember reading, and I didn't read every one completely. but yeah, no, saying these people are sick and saying that there's pedos doing sick things has been the consistent message.
And I mean, it's so ridiculous when people are saying, this conspiracy theory is actually saying, elite people are engaged in pedophile rings. Can you imagine such a crazy notion? It's like, there are elite pedophile circles dropping like flies all around the globe. It's not a crazy conspiracy theory. Now, I was going to say something, but yeah, it's just ridiculous that the media continually runs hit pieces about this when they were chasing this whole Russiagate white rabbit for the past 3 years. Meanwhile, QAnon seems to be getting vindicated by the day.
It's not vindicated by the day in the sense that a whole lot of it was true.
Yeah.
Not that all of it was true.
Exactly.
But a whole lot of it was. So, I mean, it served that purpose. But it was a manipulative propaganda campaign. And it was, if anybody thinks it wasn't part of the Trump re-election team's strategy, they're fools. I think I turned off on it hardest when I say, what was that? There's some kind of video about QAnon and how
this is the video that will get Trump reelected, and they kept posting a link to that over and over.
And they have done this and they have done this, and finally we're going to go take it all. And I'm like, gosh, that sounds so awesome, and the forces of goodness and victory will finally come to light if we vote for Trump's people. Yeah, okay. I don't like Trump that much, so I don't trust him that much. Sorry, I find him amusing, and and I find some of the things he does I like, and some of the people he pisses off, I enjoy the fact that he pisses them off. But he's not. He's not the God Emperor.
I was saying to you before, I think what is attractive about it is taking the whole QAnon narrative again, not particularly anything from the whole community, from the Great Awakening community, is that it shows people a world of unambiguous good and evil. And I think that is immediately attractive to people because they're not getting that from anywhere, And
there is unambiguous good and evil in the world. But the problem is that, you can't trust all the guys who say they're good guys.
Yeah.
Even the ones who are good guys are fallible. And so, blah, blah, blah. How should we wrap this up? Actually, I'm just enjoying sitting here talking, and we can have a longer stream tonight. What is the most interesting story you've seen lately, young Eric, since you've listened to us brave old men brave for a while? Did we lose him? Oh, hello.
You are the voice of the youth. Oh, he's not here. Oh, geez.
Yeah, we lost him. It was just getting interesting too. Oh well. Actually, maybe this is a good time to wrap it up. We just wanted to talk about streams. I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
The voice of the youth.
We lost the voice of the youth. Yes, we lost the voice of the youth. We wanted to hear his opinion on all that old man ranting.
Yeah.
That's okay. Actually, let's see what's going on in the comments. We have been ignoring them. I feel bad ignoring the comments this whole thing.
My generation had a voice. I had a voice of my generation. You know what that voice said? He said, Alinaya, Alinaya. And none of us had any clue what he was talking about. Yeah.
Red Bean Religion is in there, but tonight I'm simply not going to read their comments because they're just stupid. I hope they have the guts to come on a stream sometime. But in the comments, they say, Eldritch Fan says, I want to answer this one. Or you can answer this one, Deflating. Positing an all-powerful God, which, by the way, you should do because it's the only rational explanation for the universe. But anyway, he says, positing an all-powerful God doesn't answer the problem of nihilism. It just kicks the can down the road. Now, that's actually a pretty good insight for a young atheist, I would think. Because that's not a dismissive comment. Okay, there's a God, but you don't love him, and that's not an excuse. There's a God, but you don't love him, you don't like him, you're not sure the promise of the afterlife is even something you would want. Why would you even want one? Blah, blah, blah. I can see that line of reasoning. You can still be a theist and quite nihilist.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, a person, that's the thing is that the apathy is the one roadblock you can't get past unless I guess God just reaches into a person's heart and does that against their own free will. I mean, yeah.
However, what I would say to you, Eldritch, is that no, wait a minute, we get into some weirdness. The Eldritch Fan says, I'm a transhumanist. We will build our own God and live forever as cyborg clones. Now, the thing is, Eldritch Fan, I don't know if you're aware, let's see. He says, I don't know if you're aware, Eldritch Fan, but I can't tell if you're joking or not. Because there's people who really think the way he thinks. So he could be being sarcastic or not. Let's see what his next comment is on. The Dawkins atheist movement was about Muslims blowing things up and Christians shoving everybody around. Dummies got us into the Iraq War. Yeah, no, that's a lie, Eldritch Fan. I mean, everything about that is a lie. But more to the point, to go back to your transhumanist delusion, you realize that that's a complete religion, transhumanism. It's not particularly scientific. You are positing an AI God that you want us all to worship and that you want us all to merge with. And what about those of us who say no or don't believe your fantasy, or we think your fantasy is dangerous and evil and don't want to take part? You're pig ignorant on the history of Christianity. That's not what the new atheist movement was at all. It was all lies, son. Every word they told was lies and hate propaganda. That's what all of what Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Sam Harris did. They lied about absolutely everything. And it's really infuriating. And there's so many Christians who are so smart, like E. Michael Jones or Ed Fazer or whatever, or David Bentley Hart, and they'll look at the new atheists and they'll say, these guys are stupid, they're dead, they're toast, all their arguments are defeated, they're ridiculous, they're stupid. And they don't get it because the goal was youth indoctrination. The goal was to program guys like Eldritch Fan and Red Bean Religion and most of the young atheists who come here. The goal was to indoctrinate them and make them believe all that shit. To make them believe fake history about Christianity, even fake history about Islam, because the history they feed you of Islam is not all right either. See who else this is. Utopia.
Jay Dyer, I know again you have problems with Jay Dyer. He said a lot about a decades-long propaganda campaign to support transhumanism and the whole alien worship and the whole UFO fanatic.
Oh, yeah.
That all plays into it. Yeah.
No, I'll just say straight up, and I don't care. I won't be accused of being a paranoid conspiracy theorist. I think he's a disinformation agent straight up, who is paid by people who want him to be virulently anti-Catholic. And so he will show you anti-Catholic information, and he'll be quite nasty about it. But other groups he will leave alone. I'll leave up to you to decide which groups he leaves alone. But this is why I don't trust him. He's viciously nasty toward Catholics and will not take responsibility for violence toward Catholics that comes out of all the anti-Catholic hate rhetoric. He won't do it. I've tried. I think he's an anti-Catholic hater, and I'll put it out there in the air. I dare him to answer it. I think he intentionally goes out of his way to be hateful toward Catholics and is not entirely honest because there's sources he won't look at. And I think if he were serious, he'd have a long conversation with E. Michael Jones. But in any case, he's correct. I mean, here's the thing. Here's another thing I've discovered, actually, while I'm rambling on this. Taylor Marshall and Tim Gordon, but especially Taylor Marshall and also E. Michael Jones, did a real good takedown of Malachi Martin. showing that, like, have you ever heard of Malachi Martin and his?
No.
Okay. And a lot of his stuff has turned out to look eerily, spookily accurate. Like some of the stuff he was saying 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is turning out completely true. The problem is a whole lot of it completely not true. And
he was background here.
Huh?
Who was Malachi Martin?
Oh, Malachi Martin was a very famous. He's a former. He was a Jesuit priest who got released from most of his vows and asked to be basically taken to the non-priest status for most things, laicized voluntarily. Didn't want to act as a priest anymore and wanted to leave the Jesuit order, and wrote many books and did a lot, and used to write for National Review and be on Art Bell's show all the time. And he popularized a lot of conspiracy theories about the Vatican and about a takeover of the Vatican and evil forces taking over the Vatican. And much of what he wrote was true. The problem is much of what he wrote was also not true.
Yes.
It was spun. He had people who were paying him money under the table. So just like Alex Jones has been probably correctly accused of, he would selectively release some things that were true and some things that were not, or would ignore things that were relevant because the people paying him didn't want him talking about those things.
Yeah.
And we know Malachi Martin was on the take that way. We know quite a few others. We know a lot of people who talk about conspiracy theories are in fact part of conspiracies.
It's a meta conspiracy theory, yeah.
Well, it is. Well,
Yeah.
for example, I assume we don't have to, it's not crazy to think that the Rockefellers are involved in some conspiracy theories, because we know they have been, right? Not going to argue?
Yeah.
Okay. The Rockefellers, a few years ago, came out with something called the Disclosure Movement to reveal all the true stories about the UFOs. And they called it the Disclosure Movement, and I was it David Rockefeller, I think, and they had a bunch of well-paid celebrities talking about this new movement to tell you the truth of the conspiracy theories about the aliens and what's really going on and what's really known. How do you not think that?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're a Rockefeller. You're going to disclose the truth to us?
It's a little pet project, yeah. There's just.
Well, it's like, and he admits it, it's like, yes, I'm David Rockefeller and we're behind, but I just want to tell the truth. I'm kind of the black sheep of my family and I just want to tell you all the truth of what's really going on. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're a Rockefeller. I believe you because on any of it, right? And
did this have anything to do with like the Fox TV specials that they used to have like 20 years ago or something? That I don't know.
Oh, no, the Rockefeller family is very proud of some of the things it did. The Rockefeller family, like the Rockefeller Foundation and some of their, Nelson and David and other Rockefellers have bragged openly. They created feminism in the United States. They were proud to do it through Time Life magazine and the universities and grants and funding programs. It was working with CIA and working with people like Gloria Steinem. The Rockefellers popularized feminism in the 60s and 70s in the United States. They're proud of it. You tell people that now and they'll say you're a nutty conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, you also had Time promoting like LSD on the cover of their magazine and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a lot of people now just see it, Time magazine's been like the publicity arm of the CIA for 40, 50 years now. There's a lot of people think that now, and it's pretty obviously true, I think. And Time magazine and Life magazine always had what the governing elite wanted us to see, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Let's see. We should probably close this up soon. I'm getting tired. Is there anything else going on in the comments? Nothing really interesting. Red Bean Religion's in there making fart noises and acting like he has something to say.
Like we're not doing the same thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Yotobio Buster notes, I think it's Mr. Atheist who promotes transhumanism. We should do a stream on the transhumanist agenda sometime, but transhumanist kids, you really should be told that transhumanism is a religious cult you've been signed to.
Yes.
Because that's all it is. And it's not that mind-blowing. It is pretty creepy, though. Someone also says, sorry I got here late. I wanted to check the stream out because of some stuff happening on Twitter with Apologist Supreme. Y'all probably already talked about that. No, I have no idea what's going on Twitter with Apologist Supreme. I'll talk to him. If he lost his temper and said something stupid, I'll hate him forever and fire him. No, if he lost his temper and said something stupid, I've done that too. We'll talk about it, but I'm not going to get too dramatic over whatever he did or didn't do. So I'll find out whatever it is. Anything else you wanted to talk about? Deflating?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Well, this was fun.
Really good to be back talking with you.
Yeah, you too, man. And it's good to branch out into politics. So, all right, everybody. Well, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Please go to we're trying to reach 1,000. We're on our 3rd channel, and we're trying to rebuild to 1,000, and we're getting there. We just crested 700 and change. But also, everybody go to subscribe to Deflating Atheism. Give us a like and a subscribe. God bless everybody.